The moment Commander Kendra Blackwood entered the training facility, the whispers began. "Great. A diversity hire in a wheelchair," one arrogant recruit said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Navy's gone soft." His teammates laughed, filming on their phones, completely unaware that the woman they were mocking had conducted 89 classified missions, and that every SEAL team commander on the base was about to walk through that door. For more powerful videos about our military heroes, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to tell these important stories. Commander Kendra Blackwood, 32 years old, wheeled herself into Classroom Delta at Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado with the same precision she'd used to navigate hostile territory in 17 different countries. Her raven black hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her steel-gray eyes held a coldness that came from seeing the worst humanity had to offer and surviving it. She wore the standard Navy digital camouflage uniform, her insignia perfectly positioned, her appearance impeccable despite the custom racing wheelchair that had been her companion for the past 4 years. The sleek black titanium frame was military grade, designed for an active lifestyle, but it was the small trident pin on her collar that told her real story. The Navy SEAL insignia, earned through the most brutal military selection process on Earth, the kind of pin that less than 1% of candidates ever got to wear, the kind that marked you as one of the deadliest warriors the United States had ever produced. Kendra had chosen this assignment for a reason. After 4 years of recovery, physical therapy, and accepting her new reality, she'd been offered a comfortable desk job at the Pentagon. Instead, she'd requested to return to Coronado, to the place where she'd earned her trident, to teach the next generation of warriors. But as she looked at the 25 SEAL candidates seated before her, she could already see the contempt in their eyes. They saw the wheelchair. They saw a woman. They saw everything they believed a SEAL wasn't supposed to be. They had no idea who she really was. The training facility was massive, a state-of-the-art classroom designed for advanced tactical instruction. Large screens covered the walls, ready to display combat footage and tactical scenarios. The smell of fresh paint and new equipment filled the air, a stark contrast to the blood and cordite Kendra remembered from her operational days. But today, her peace was about to be shattered, not by enemy fire, but by the arrogance of young men who thought they'd already proven themselves by surviving basic underwater demolition, SEAL training. The 25 candidates seated before her were the cream of the crop. They'd survived Hell Week, the most brutal selection process in military history. They'd endured hypothermia, sleep deprivation, physical punishment that broke 80% of candidates. They'd earned the right to continue SEAL training, and that success had made them cocky. The ringleader was Petty Officer Jake Morrison, 24 years old, a former college football player who'd barely made it through BUD-S, but now carried himself like he was already a Tier 1 operator. His muscular frame and confident swagger made him a natural leader among the candidates, but his arrogance was about to be his downfall. Beside him sat his crew, Derek, the former Army Ranger who'd lateral transferred and never let anyone forget his prior service, Chad, whose wealthy family had political connections that made him feel untouchable, Luis, who recorded everything for his growing social media following, and Brad, whose cruel sense of humor had made him popular among the candidates but hated by the instructors. As Kendra positioned her wheelchair at the front of the classroom, the whispers grew louder. "Is this for real?" Derek muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. "Diversity and inclusion at its finest," Jake announced, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Wonder what her qualification is. Did she watch a SEAL movie once?" The classroom erupted in laughter. Luis's phone was already out, recording what he was sure would be viral content for his military TikTok account. Kendra sat perfectly still, her hands resting calmly on the armrests of her wheelchair. She'd faced this kind of disrespect before, in briefing rooms where senior officers questioned whether a woman belonged in special operations, in combat zones where enemy combatants underestimated her, in hospital rooms where doctors told her she'd never walk again. This was nothing new, but unlike those other times, today she had backup. In the observation room directly above the classroom, separated by one-way glass, 15 SEAL team commanders stood watching. These were the men who'd served with Kendra, who'd fought beside her, who knew exactly what she was capable of, and they were recording everything. Master Chief Daniel Foster, 45 years old, stood at the front of the observation room, his jaw clenched as he watched the scene unfold below. He'd served 3 deployments with Kendra, had watched her perform under fire, had seen her make impossible shots and impossible decisions. "Should we shut this down now, Master Chief?" a younger instructor asked, clearly uncomfortable with what was happening. "Negative," Foster replied, his voice hard as steel. "Let Commander Blackwood handle this. She requested this assignment specifically. She knows what she's doing." Below, Kendra finally spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, carrying the natural authority of someone who'd commanded operations in the world's most hostile environments. "Good morning, gentlemen. I am Commander Kendra Blackwood. For the next 8 weeks, I will be your instructor for advanced combat tactics and leadership. This course has a 40% failure rate. By the time we're finished, 10 of you will not graduate." Jake leaned back in his chair, a smirk on his face. "Ma'am, with all due respect, how exactly are you qualified to teach us combat tactics when you're in a wheelchair?" The question hung in the air. Other candidates nodded, emboldened by Jake's directness. Kendra's expression didn't change. "An excellent question, Petty Officer Morrison. Would you like to know my qualifications?" "Yeah, actually, I would," Jake replied, his tone making it clear he expected her to have none. "I graduated BUD, S-Class 301, Kendra began, her voice steady. "I completed SEAL qualification training with a perfect score in tactical decision-making. I was assigned to SEAL Team 3, then later to DEVGRU. A few candidates shifted uncomfortably. DevGRU was SEAL Team 6, the most elite unit in naval special warfare. But Jake wasn't backing down. "Anyone can claim they were at DevGRU, ma'am. Doesn't mean it's true." Derek laughed. "Yeah. And I'm sure you did all that from a wheelchair, right?" The classroom erupted in laughter again. Chad was filming now, too, multiple phones capturing what they thought was the humiliation of an unqualified instructor. Kendra reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small leather case. She opened it slowly, deliberately, and held it up for the class to see. It was her military ID, but not her current one. This was her operational ID from DEVGRU, complete with her photograph in full tactical gear, her weapons visible, her eyes hard and cold. The name read, CDR Kendra Blackwood, DEVGRU Red Squadron, call sign, Viper. Several candidates leaned forward, suddenly less certain of themselves. But Jake was committed now, his ego unable to let him back down. "Okay, so you were a SEAL before you got injured," he said, emphasizing the word before. "But you're not operational anymore. You can't demonstrate techniques. You can't show us how it's done in the field. So again, how are you qualified to teach us?" Kendra closed the ID case and returned it to her pocket. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped several degrees in temperature. "Petty Officer Morrison, do you know why my call sign was Viper?" "Because you're venomous?" Brad called out, generating more laughter. "Because I struck without warning, and my targets never saw me coming," Kendra replied. "I conducted 89 classified operations across 17 countries. I have 23 confirmed kills as a sniper. I led the team that extracted Ambassador Williams from the Benghazi compound. I was the tactical lead on Operation Serpent Strike, which eliminated a high-value target that had evaded capture for 6 years." The laughter had stopped. The classroom was silent now, candidates beginning to realize they might have made a mistake. But Kendra wasn't finished. "I received 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Silver Star, and a Navy Cross. I was nominated for the Medal of Honor after I held a defensive position for 9 hours, while my team extracted wounded hostages, taking enemy fire from 3 directions while coordinating air support." She paused, letting that sink in. "And 4 years ago, during Operation Desert Falcon, I lost both legs below the knee when the building I was clearing was hit by an enemy rocket. I was trapped under rubble for 14 hours. When they finally extracted me, I had lost so much blood that the doctors gave me less than a 5% chance of survival. The classroom was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming, but I survived. Kendra continued, her voice growing stronger. I went through 2 years of rehabilitation. I learned to walk again on prosthetics. I requalified on every weapon system I'd previously mastered. And then I requested this assignment because I wanted to teach entitled children like you what it actually means to be a SEAL. Jake's face had gone pale. Chad and Luis had lowered their phones. Derek was staring at the floor. So, to answer your question, Petty Officer Morrison, Kendra said, her steel-gray eyes boring into him. I am qualified to teach you because I have forgotten more about combat tactics than you will ever learn. And if you have a problem with that, the door is right behind you. Your BUD.S graduation doesn't mean anything if you can't respect the people who paved the way for you to be here. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Jake, unable to accept being put in his place, made his fatal error. He stood up, grabbing his gear. This is bullshit. I didn't survive Hell Week to be taught by a cripple who can't even demonstrate a proper tactical entry. Several other candidates gasped. That word, that slur, hung in the air like poison. Kendra's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Petty Officer Morrison, you just made the worst mistake of your military career. Whatever, Jake sneered. I'm requesting a transfer to a real instructor. Anyone else coming with me? Derek stood. So did Chad. Luis hesitated, but eventually stood as well, not wanting to be left out. 4 candidates, out of 25, were walking out. That's when the door burst open. Master Chief Foster entered first, followed by 14 other SEAL team commanders. They wore their dress uniforms, their chests covered in ribbons and medals that represented decades of combat experience. These were legends, men whose names appeared in classified after-action reports, whose operations had changed the course of wars. They filed into the room with military precision, forming a line along the back wall. Every single one of them stood at attention. Jake and his followers froze, suddenly realizing that their little rebellion had been witnessed by the senior leadership of Naval Special Warfare. Gentlemen, Master Chief Foster said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. You just had the privilege of being instructed by one of the finest warriors this command has ever produced, and you chose to disrespect her. He walked slowly toward Jake, who was now visibly shaking. Do you know how many SEAL instructors we have at this command? Petty Officer Morrison. I don't know, Master Chief. Maybe 50? 173. Foster replied. Do you know how many of them volunteered to teach your class? Jake shook his head. None of them, Foster said coldly. Because your class has a reputation, you're known as the most arrogant, most entitled group of candidates we've had in a decade. You think surviving BUD.S makes you special. It doesn't. It makes you qualified to begin learning what it means to be a SEAL. Another commander stepped forward. This was Commander James Mitchell, the commanding officer of SEAL Team 3. Commander Blackwood served under my command for 3 years, he said. She was the best operator I ever had the privilege to lead. When she went down in that building in Syria, she'd already neutralized 4 enemy combatants and was providing covering fire for her team. The rocket that hit her position was meant for the hostages she was protecting. She saved 11 lives that day, at the cost of her own legs. A third commander joined them. I'm Commander Sarah Chen. I was Commander Blackwood's teammate on 6 operations. I watched her make shots that shouldn't have been possible. I watched her carry a wounded teammate 3 miles through hostile territory while taking enemy fire, and I was there when they pulled her out of that collapsed building, still conscious, still directing the rescue operation, even though both her legs were destroyed. One by one, the SEAL commanders began sharing their stories of operations where Kendra had been the difference between success and failure, stories of her courage, her tactical brilliance, her unwavering commitment to the mission, and her teammates. The 21 candidates who had remained seated listened in stunned silence. Jake, Derek, Chad, and Luis stood frozen, trapped between their instructor and the wall of SEAL commanders, blocking their exit. Master Chief Foster turned his attention back to Jake. Petty Officer Morrison, you used a slur against a superior officer. You showed insubordination. You attempted to incite mutiny among your fellow candidates. Any one of those offenses is grounds for dismissal from SEAL training. Jake's face had gone from pale to gray. Master Chief, I didn't know. If I had known who she was, that's the problem, Commander Blackwood interrupted, her voice cutting through his excuse. You only show respect when you know someone's credentials. You judge people by their appearance, by their physical abilities, without knowing their story. That's not what a SEAL does. She wheeled her chair forward, positioning herself directly in front of Jake. A SEAL evaluates situations based on intelligence, not assumptions. A SEAL respects the chain of command, regardless of personal opinion. A SEAL understands that the warrior beside them might not look like what they expect, but deserves their respect until proven otherwise. Kendra's voice grew harder. You four decided that my wheelchair made me unqualified to teach you. You decided that a woman couldn't possibly have earned her place in this command. You decided that you knew better than the senior leadership who assigned me to this position. That level of arrogance gets people killed in the field. Commander Mitchell stepped forward. Here's what's going to happen. Petty Officers Morrison, Hayes, Preston, and Martinez, you are hereby removed from this training course. You will appear before a review board to determine if you remain in naval special warfare. Given the evidence we have, he gestured to the cameras that had been recording everything. I wouldn't be optimistic about your chances. Derek's voice cracked. Sir, please. We made a mistake. We didn't understand. You didn't want to understand. Master Chief Foster cut him off. You wanted to mock someone you perceived as weak. That's not a mistake. That's a character flaw. And we don't put tridents on the chests of people with character flaws. The four candidates gathered their gear in silence, shame and fear visible on their faces. As they approached the door, Jake turned back one last time. Commander Blackwood, he said, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. What I said was inexcusable. Kendra looked at him for a long moment. Petty Officer Morrison, I accept your apology. But apologies don't undo damage. Every person in a wheelchair, every disabled veteran, every woman in this command will face people like you who judge them without knowing their story. The question is whether you learn from this moment or whether you continue to be part of the problem. Jake nodded, tears actually visible in his eyes now, and left the room with his three companions. After they left, Commander Mitchell addressed the remaining 21 candidates. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Your instructor has more combat experience than everyone in this room combined. She has skills that you can only hope to develop, and she volunteered for this position, knowing she would face disrespect because she believes in training the next generation of SEALs to be better than the one before. Master Chief Foster added, Commander Blackwood could be teaching at the Naval War College. She could be working at SOCOM headquarters. She could be enjoying a comfortable retirement with full benefits. Instead, she's here, putting up with your bullshit, because she cares about this community. I suggest you show her the respect she's earned. The commanders filed out, leaving Kendra alone with the remaining 21 candidates. The classroom was silent for a long moment. Finally, one candidate stood up. His name was Petty Officer Marcus Johnson, and he'd been the quietest member of the class until now. Ma'am, he said, his voice steady, I apologize on behalf of this class. We should have shown you respect from the moment you entered this room. We would be honored to learn from you. One by one, the other candidates stood, each offering their own apology. Some were clearly shaken by what they'd witnessed. Others seemed genuinely remorseful. All of them looked at their instructor with new eyes. Kendra nodded, accepting their apologies. Gentlemen, sit down. We have a lot of work to do. She activated the large screens on the walls, and suddenly the room was filled with tactical diagrams, satellite imagery, and operational planning documents. Today, we're going to analyze Operation Neptune Spear, the raid that eliminated Osama bin Laden. We're going to break down every tactical decision, every contingency plan, every element that made that operation successful. And then we're going to discuss what could have gone wrong and how the team would have adapted. For the next 3 hours, Kendra taught with a level of detail and insight that left the candidates in awe. She broke down complex, tactical scenarios, explained decision-making processes that saved lives, and shared lessons learned from operations that most of them didn't even know had happened. She didn't need to demonstrate a tactical entry physically. Her mind, her experience, her ability to think 3 steps ahead of the enemy. That was what made her an exceptional instructor. During a break, Petty Officer Johnson approached her desk. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, how did you do it? How did you come back from losing your legs and still maintain this level of expertise?" Kendra looked at him, seeing genuine curiosity rather than mockery. "The day I woke up in the hospital and realized my legs were gone, I had 2 choices. I could let it end my military career and spend the rest of my life being bitter about what I'd lost, or I could accept my new reality and find a new way to serve." She gestured to her prosthetics, barely visible beneath her uniform trousers. "These legs don't define me. They're just tools, like any other equipment. My mind, my training, my experience, that's what makes me a SEAL, and that's what I can pass on to you." Another candidate, Petty Officer Sarah Williams, one of only 2 women in the class, raised her hand. "Ma'am, did you face this kind of discrimination before your injury? Because you're a woman?" Kendra smiled slightly. The first time she'd shown any warmth all day. "Every single day, Petty Officer Williams, I had to prove myself constantly. I had to be twice as good to get half the recognition, but that made me better. That made me sharper. Use the discrimination you face as fuel. Let it drive you to be so undeniably excellent that no one can question your place here." As the class resumed, word had already spread throughout the base about what had happened. The story of the 4 arrogant candidates who'd mocked Commander Blackwood was being told in every barracks, every common area, every corner of the Naval Special Warfare Center. By evening, the 4 removed candidates had appeared before the review board. The outcome was swift and definitive. Jake Morrison, Derek Hayes, Chad Preston, and Luis Martinez were removed from SEAL training and reassigned to conventional Navy units. Their dreams of becoming SEALs were over. But for the 21 candidates who remained in Commander Blackwood's class, something profound had changed. They began to understand that being a SEAL wasn't about physical perfection or macho posturing. It was about mental toughness, tactical excellence, and an unwavering commitment to the mission and the team. Over the next 8 weeks, Kendra pushed them harder than any instructor they'd ever had. She didn't go easy on them because of what had happened on the first day. If anything, she was more demanding, more exacting, because she knew they could handle it. She taught them to think like operators, to plan like commanders, to make decisions under pressure that could mean the difference between life and death. She shared lessons from her 89 missions, helping them learn from her successes and her mistakes. And slowly, the 21 candidates began to transform from arrogant BUD-S graduates into actual professionals worthy of the SEAL trident. On the final day of the course, Commander Blackwood sat at the front of the classroom one last time. All 21 candidates had passed. Not one had failed out. "Gentlemen," she said, using the same formal address she'd used on day 1, "you came into this course thinking you were already SEALs. You were wrong. You were candidates with potential. Now, you're 1 step closer to earning that trident." She paused, making eye contact with each of them. "Remember what you learned here. Remember that true strength comes in many forms. Remember that the person beside you might not look like what you expect, but they might be the one who saves your life." Petty Officer Johnson stood. "Ma'am, this class would like to present you with something." He pulled out a custom-made unit patch. It featured a viper coiled around a SEAL trident with the words "Blackwood's Vipers" embroidered beneath. "We'd be honored if you'd accept this," Johnson said, "and we'd like to request that when we graduate and receive our team assignments, we request to serve under your command if you ever return to operational status." Kendra looked at the patch, feeling emotion she hadn't allowed herself to show during the entire 8 weeks. "I'm honored, gentlemen, I truly am." As the candidates filed out for the last time, Master Chief Foster entered the classroom. "Hell of a job, Commander. Best class results we've had in years." Kendra smiled. "They were good candidates. They just needed someone to challenge their assumptions." "And that display on day 1?" Foster asked. "That was all intentional, wasn't it? You knew they'd disrespect you. You wanted them to." "I needed them to," Kendra replied. "They needed to learn that lesson early, before their arrogance got someone killed in the field. Better to fail here than in combat." Foster nodded appreciatively. "The review board has asked if you'd be willing to teach the next class." Kendra looked around the empty classroom, thinking about the 21 young warriors she'd just helped shape. Absolutely. When do I start? Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed someone being judged unfairly based on their appearance or physical abilities? Have you ever made assumptions about someone's capabilities without knowing their story? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that true warriors come in all forms, hit that subscribe button because everyone deserves to have their story told, and everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are, not just what they appear to be.